I streamed early yesterday, so I missed this, but apparently Gus Johnson went on to Paymoneywubby and he explained his side of the story. Now, I know a lot of people, and this is something I understand, a lot of people are not happy with me because of the way that I talk about this scenario. And I think it's because a lot of you guys look at this in a very narrow frame where you say, it was a long time ago, so why do you care? I've been on record saying that I think that what he did was like really bad, but like I can understand growth and moving forward. The problem is that with everything that we have, he's not apologetic, right? He's not truly apologetic. We heard in one of his responses that he talked about how this is the one that really gets me, is that somewhat recently, probably 6 months ago when he first apologized, he mentioned that they already worked through this issue as a couple by going to a relationship counselor. And then when her response was, no, we never did that. We went to like a weird couples therapy. I think it was under the intention to open the relationship up. So that's a huge red flag to me. That's like a really big red flag to me. And it's like, okay, how can you be truly apologetic if every time you apologize, you push off as much accountability as possible, right? At this point, I think it just comes off as incredibly disingenuous. I don't know what to tell you. And he seems to be, he'll make a video. I remember watching his other video. It rubbed me the wrong way. He doesn't seem to have, he still hasn't genuinely apologized. And for a lot of you guys, you're like, I don't care, let's move on. And that's fine. You can feel that way if you'd like. But from like a consistency argument, like I don't see how your past issues can be forgiven if you've never truly apologized for the issue. That's what's the frustrating part. It's not that like he can never move on. He did a shitty thing, but you can be truly apologetic and be like, okay, you've learned from your mistakes, and you've shown your audience that you've learned, and so it's an educational moment. So maybe your audience can avoid doing something related to what you did in their personal life. But this is the problem that I have, and like you have to understand it. And like that's just the way that my perspective is going to operate. And now we have another response. And what are we at? 6 months plus since the original scenarios happened. And we have another like apology. I think we already got a text apology and then a video apology, which only came after people criticized him because he tried to just come back without really saying anything. And he released like a random video that was in poor taste because some people interpreted it as him making fun of the situation with her. It was a TikTok dating guru. Yeah, there we go. And now we have another thing. And it's like, at this point, I'm going to be going into this with exhausted energy because, I understand, but I will say, to be as charitable as possible, it can take a long time to understand what you did was wrong, right? Like I talk about this, I got banned on TikTok, and like my immediate response was I didn't do anything wrong. So I'll give him the benefit of the doubt there, that maybe he finally does understand what he did wrong. I'll give him that. So let's see how this goes.
Look at the bits.
STP.
What? Gus can call in? No, Gus. No. Wait, what? That's not the real Gus Johnson. Oh my God, that is him. Oh shit. Okay. Gus, I'm just gonna send you my Discord. Let's get on a call. I want this to be very clear. I'm not bringing Gus on to suck his dick. I think that that would be unfair to Sabrina. And I'm trying to be, although I am biased, and I recognize that I'm biased in this situation, I think that the only
Which way is he biased, for or against?
fair thing for me to do isn't to sit here and be like, Gus is right about everything, fuck everyone. It's to
I guess in the favor of Gus.
let Gus say his side of the story and then form an opinion once we know all sides.
Again, like I just need you guys to understand, like he's done that already and he's failed at doing it. And like that's where I'm coming from. Like he's already expressed his side of the story poorly. And his side of the story is I did a shitty thing, but we worked through it in the relationship, which it was a lie because it was a TikTok dating guru. It wasn't actually a therapist. And he said he went to, you know what I'm saying? So I don't really, what side is there left? You know?
Well, if it isn't Gus the abuser Johnson in the flesh.
Oh my goodness, not the intro I was expecting.
Incredible.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to lighten the mood.
It's okay, I understand the tone of the stream. Thank you so much for calling me.
Yes, thank you for talking. I don't even know where to begin, but I'm glad you were watching stream. You've been a bit of a conversation piece on the stream for a few months now. I can't seem to shake it.
I really appreciate you calling me and talking about this like this. This is just a really unique uncomfortable situation for me that I don't usually have any experience with. But I just kind of wanted to jump on and just kind of shed a little bit more light on the situation and maybe clarify some of the things that have been out there in the last like 5-6 months or so, and just kind of go from there. So thank you so much for giving me a call, dude.
Yeah, so people that aren't aware, basically he was in a relationship with this girl and he treated her like shit. I think there was an aspect where he tried to like force her to get an abortion. That's a whole conversation to have. And like the bigger issue though is that she was having like really bad medical problems and she had an ectopic pregnancy and he didn't take her seriously and he like treated her like shit. You know what I mean? Toxic, selfish bullshit that again, you can grow from, but we have to establish that he never truly apologized. Okay.
You know, this has been something that I've had to deal with every day for the last half of a year, and it's dominated a lot of my life. So I
good. I don't know. You should have apologized correctly. I don't know what to tell you.
just wanted to kind of come in here and just talk.
What's annoying too, and you know, is that this idea of like a lot of big content creators, they are rich, and so when they do something wrong, a big play is to disappear for months, and then to come back, and then to be like, oh, I've been struggling for so long. You know, that's not really how the normal world works. Like, I understand taking like a week off and like, okay, I'm frustrated with the situation. I need some time to, but you just, it feels like, again, it's another part of the performance of YouTube apologies is a disingenuous apology where you play you basically play victim, but say, you basically fence it. You say, I'm the victim. Yes, that person's a victim, but so am I. And then disappearing for months. That's part of it. And it's like, you know, real people in the real world can't do that. You can't just disappear. You know, you usually have to be like, okay, I fucked this up. And then you move forward from there. Like imagine being in your, you know, at a job, like I fucked up. You know, one time there was the guy that I worked with. He was a nice guy and we were friendly. And then like something happened, like it doesn't even matter. Like it was something that he instigated, but it doesn't matter because at the end of the day, we're two young, dumb fucking kids. Like we were young and like young 20s. You know what I mean? Like, so we were friends and then like something happened. And at one point I sent him a picture of a girl and I said, do you think that she's hot? And he was like, yeah. And then I sent him another picture of her and she had a pee-pee. And he's like, oh man, you got me, you know, and she is hot, by the way. And this was when I was younger. This is so. And then like they pulled me into the thing and they're like, hey, you did this wrong. I was like, all right, fuck, I should have done that. You know what I mean? Like you can't wait 6 months in the real world. You know what I'm saying? So
Talk a bit about some of it. So
yeah, anything you want to share. I mean, if once you get through, you know, certain things you want to touch on, I can ask a couple questions. You can choose to answer them or not, but you have the floor. Anything you feel like you want to let everybody know, go for it.
Sure, I appreciate it. I mean, I just want to say up front too.
And the reason he did it is because he was mad at me for something else. By the way, it doesn't matter. It was like bullshit, like drama at work. You know what I mean? Like dumb shit, like kids stuff where you bitch about everything.
The Sabrina situation, like what she had to go through with the ectopic pregnancy, was real. It was painful. I was just absolutely so saddened that we had to go through this shit, and really
the breathing is getting me.
Really, I just want to be known, especially as I talk about her and some of these situations, that I do not want to negate or discredit any of the legitimate trauma that she had to go through. I can't imagine being in her position. She and I had talked a number of times about what would happen if she did become pregnant. And we had both agreed that since we were really young and didn't really have a lot of our personal life footing in order yet, neither of us really had any money when we moved out here. We both agreed that it was not, we couldn't give a good life to a child.
Listen, we're gonna have to touch on this conversation about abortion. Here's the thing, and like this isn't something that I necessarily fault Gus for. When it comes to the predetermined agreement with somebody that you're going to have an abortion without if you get pregnant, I don't think that you can within reasonably expect somebody to feel forced into maintaining that agreement, right? Like you might be like, listen, we should get an abortion if it happens, and like, but once somebody's pregnant, you're not the same person. You have a lot of hormones going through you, and the child becomes a child once you're pregnant for a girl. This is the fundamental difference between men and women, is that once a woman is pregnant, it's a baby to her in a lot of senses. For a guy, not so much, because it's not attached to you. And this is why I know people who've had miscarriages, and it's exponentially worse for the mother than it is for the father. The mother gets, and of course it's still sad for the dad, but it's different. They didn't have, like, there's a feeling that you lost a child, and then what's wrong with me to have this, and then my husband's not going to love me, and then there's just so many waves of emotions, and it's totally different. And so, like, listen, I understand the agreement that they had, and that's fine, and I can understand why he might get like frustrated if she didn't want to hold to that agreement. I do understand that, but at the end of the day, and this is more of like an educational conversation, you can't you can't create that circumstance. You shouldn't be creating a circumstance of like, if we get pregnant, we're just going to get an abortion and then try to force somebody to it. The biggest thing that expresses to me is this concept of like, we're going to get an abortion if we get pregnant. It suggests to me that they're not being sexually safe. And I'll tell you, like, for my father, who like is not in my life at all, my mother had a hard time getting pregnant, and they were married, and he didn't really want a kid. And so, but he didn't want to use protection. So he's like, whatever, I'm just not going to get her pregnant anyway because she's having trouble getting pregnant. And then she got pregnant, and then he left. You know, he left her 5 months pregnant. And it's like, you know, part of me feels like, you know, there's an aspect to this of not being safe in bed because you feel like, oh, well, you know, whatever. Having to have that conversation about an abortion, to me, generally implies that you're not being sexually safe. Maybe you're doing the pull-out method, something like that. And so there are a lot of issues with this. If you don't want to have a baby, do your best to use a condom. I know it's not 100% safe, but chances are there was something going on in this scenario that would potentially generate a situation where she would get pregnant. Because you have to understand something, is that like, even though you make a choice to get an abortion, it still can be a very traumatic experience for a woman to do that, or a trans man. Okay. I don't, you know, of course you have to watch everything you say now, but it can be a very traumatic experience for a woman. So, because you're still, like I said before, it's like a person to you, and you're like, you have to make the conscious choice to terminate it. And I'm pro-choice, but it's a very stressful scenario, right? So, yeah.
That time. So we had agreed that, you know, if a pregnancy did occur, that we would seek termination. You know, I just funded the podcast with Eddie and was trying to deliver that on time and everything.
I like that better at the top right. But
and there was just a lot going on, and neither of us had prepared for this. It was really terrifying. We started going to doctor's visits and Planned Parenthood together to try to look at our next options. And it really worried me right away that Sabrina began to express a change of her mind in regards to what we would do with the kid. And, you know, she was kind of in between jobs and stuff at the time, and she just kind of fully changed her mind on that. And I didn't deal with that in a very mature way.
Like I said, like what I think it makes sense why she would change her mind. But I could also understand, especially from a young, uneducated guy, why he would think that, like, we already said we get an abortion, because this is like a really deep conversation about understanding women as a man, right? That's what it really comes down to. And not everybody, like, do you think at that age that I had that deep understanding? No, at that age I probably would have the same, hey, we already promised we do this, you know? But again, I like, as a point of education, don't use this as, if you're a guy, don't just be like, we should get an abortion if we are pregnant, because to me that's, make sure you use the condom still, you know, because I feel like they probably weren't being as safe as they should have.
I was really fearful. I just told her I wasn't ready for this, and I just expressed that with her at the time. On the day that a lot of people seem to have been referencing in the comments of various things and stuff in the last few months, I had made a podcast obligation with a guest to film that evening. We had just started the podcast and gotten it off the ground, and I just felt a lot of pressure to deliver to the people that had crowdfunded that and to deliver to Eddie. And this is me taking full responsibility for that decision. It's not Eddie or anybody else, you know, that caused that. I just chose to stick behind and honor that obligation. She told me that she was going to the hospital, and I told her I would join her as soon as I was done.
Yeah, I think that's a bad choice, but, you know, that's a dumb choice. You should have went to the hospital with your girlfriend, obviously. I get what he's saying. You felt like he was, but this was a bad choice. You would have rescheduled, but okay, I understand. You know, it was just a bad call. Bad call. Okay.
At that time, neither of us still knew that it was an ectopic pregnancy. We had no idea the emergency situation that was in effect. That was neither of us. I joined her at the
hospital. So if you're going to the hospital, I mean,
hospital that evening, and we both got the diagnosis that it was ectopic and it had to be removed right away. And I stayed with her during the surgery. And
so I think this was a little bit later, because she was consistently going to the hospital, I think, because she was having problems and they didn't know what it was yet.
Took her home after. But that was that order of events as it happened.
I wonder, I think that was part of the story. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think part of it was that she was constantly having to go to the doctor, the hospital, and they didn't know it was wrong. And so I genuinely wonder if part of his perspective was, oh, she's going to the doctor a lot or the hospital a lot, and nothing is wrong. So I think that she's exaggerating. And that doesn't necessarily lay blame on him. It lays blame more on the hospital. But as a point of education, you guys need to be your best advocates, because like the mortality rate from hospitals fucking up is astronomically higher than you'd think. It's incredible how often they fuck up. Because at the end of the day, these are people, then they're just getting you in and out, and they are desensitized to your problem because they've seen people fucking die before their eyes. So you need to be your biggest advocate for yourself. You need to be your biggest advocate. You need to complain. You need to bitch. You need to moan. You need to advocate for your. You can't just you can't let the doctor go like, oh, this is this. Okay, if you feel like shit, you have to do it. You have to complain. So I'm just saying, okay.
One thing that kept getting brought up tonight, and that I've seen brought up quite a bit, is the pressure that we really only know the side that she put out. But there was a lot of implied pressure to the point where a lot of people called abuse of the abortion thing. A lot of people said they're taking what she said and they're expanding on it, that like you weren't open to conversation, there was stonewalling. Do you want to elaborate on that at all? Is that how it went? Do you view things differently? Is there more that we could know about that situation that you think would help clarify? Or was it as accurate as she explained?
I mean, I totally understand you asking. I can't speak too much to the minutia of conversations that I had, 4 years ago, but we did talk about this a lot. I didn't say that we shouldn't talk about it, but at the same time, I recognized that some of the language that I was using was not the most conducive to a very team-oriented approach of like, what do we do here? I was just really afraid what to do, and we just weren't ready for the situation. And I think that sometimes I just said some stupid stuff. After we broke up, I mean, I think a lot of people don't really realize this.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like he quite fully understands why the expectation of somebody holding to the promise of getting an abortion if they get pregnant is generally problematic, because like it's a different perspective for a man and a woman. I'm not sitting and saying this in a way where like, oh, fuck him. I'm just saying that like that's a very harsh decision for somebody that gets pregnant. To like it's you can't get pregnant, so you're never going to understand that perspective. Again, practice.
This situation happened before her video came out. It had happened about 3 years prior. I think already there are a lot of folks that maybe thought that this had happened really recently. It happened about 3 years prior, and we had stayed together for the 3 years after that. And during this time, we talked about this situation a lot. I just want to touch a little bit more on kind of the process after the ectopic surgery happened, if that's all right.
Yeah, please.
In the months and the year that followed the surgery, she and I went to so many doctor's appointments together, saw dozens of specialists, and went to just countless emergency rooms and urgent cares. Our lives day to day were pretty heavily dictated by this situation. It was not uncommon for many of the days a week to have some semblance of an episode with Sabrina occurring.
This was after she went. She had an ectopic pregnancy, right?
A lot of the times it would manifest in it appeared like she was having a panic attack. I really don't want to say that to discredit anything that she was going to. 95% of the time, she would be having trouble communicating and would be hyperventilating. Sometimes I would get frantic phone calls while she was driving and afraid that she might pass out, or she would be waking me up in the middle of the night and insisting that, we should go to the emergency room or the urgent care. And it was not uncommon for us to have a few days in a row where both of us were getting just a couple hours of sleep at night at best. It was pretty incessant for a while, and it was so scary and confusing. I honestly, I absolutely tried my best.
What I will say is that, and this is a very human experience, and it is a character flaw, and that a lot of people just have. It's very difficult to be with somebody who has like a ton of like issues, and they're constantly going to the hospital and whatnot. And the right thing to do is to stick through it and be your best and be strong for that person, because they're going through an experience, and that experience is valid. And like, they're scared of their own self. And I've been there before when I was with somebody who had like, we started dating and there was nothing wrong, and then they got an autoimmune disease that triggered while we were dating. And I did my best to be supportive, and I was incredibly supportive. But I could understand why somebody might get burnt out where they might be like, are you faking this? Are you hamming this up? It's not, and it's also possible Sabrina, there might have been instances where Sabrina did do that. I'm not saying that she did. We don't know the specifics, the nuance of it, but I could see why, potentially, as much as it sucks for Sabrina, how this would be very much of a this could be a burnout for him. Right? Because in a perfect world, we would all be the best versions of ourselves all the time, you know? But it's possible that he was worn down by the scenario and he got frustrated. And like they said, they weren't necessarily sleeping as much as they wanted to. And it's difficult to be there for everybody, or your partner 100%, especially, you know, I don't know how early into the relationship it was, but especially, you know, in a relationship as young people, it can be very difficult to be your 100% all the time. Like it's kind of unrealistic expectation. It's one of the unfortunate aspects of life. You know what I mean?
I completely know that I could have done better. I really tried my best during that time. And it was really a period of months where we were both absolutely exhausted. We were clearly suffering, and her so much more than me from a physical and healing standpoint. I'm not trying to equate that one dang bit, but you know, it seemed like nothing was being figured out and nothing could be done for quite some time. The thing is, during this time that lasted for months, you know, there were just times where I was so exhausted. I got frustrated at the problem, at the situation. It seemed like it wasn't getting better. And sometimes I said some stupid, flippant, short things. I think, I don't know. I've since apologized for these things. It's embarrassing. You know, these weren't things that
I still truly want to know why he said that they went to a therapist if they had just gone to like a TikTok fucking dating guru that just, you know what I mean? Like that's probably one of my biggest questions.
woke up in the morning and just said to her, you know, this was born out of a constant state of fear and exhaustion and frustration, and that does not make them okay. I mean, the last year of our relationship, especially, it was just we had gotten to the point where we were just hardly dating. You know, we were just pretty much roommates at that point. You know, we didn't spend a lot of free time together. There just was no really kind of like excitement or drive. And
I understand that. Okay.
I'm not pinning that on either of us. You know, just you understand when you get into a relationship with somebody, after 4 years goes by, you kind of play ping pong with who's kind of trying more at a certain time to keep it alive. And it'd been clear for a long time that it was a dead relationship. We had sought professional help. We talked to a couples counselor that she had found.
I hope he pushes him on this. I'm genuinely curious what they mean by a couples counselor.
The internet, and we booked a few sessions with her. And
I wanted to ask you about that because that's a large point in a lot of your naysayers, that because it was all very public, unfortunately, on Twitter. But you posted, or you said in a video that you went to therapy with her. She denied it on Twitter. You posted receipts. She then outed what she felt the therapy was about and how it was irrelevant. And then I don't believe you responded to that. Is that something you want to touch on? Because a lot of people...
I feel like he needs to touch on this.
You know, don't know what to... I'm one of those people, right? I'm hearing two sides, and I want to hear more.
Yeah, totally. I mean, to speak to that just up front, too, she had found somebody online who did couples counseling sessions, and she brought that person to me and the idea of going to these shared sessions together, and we attended a handful of them together and spoke at length for many hours about our relationship. I also talked to this counselor personally.
Okay.
Just in terms of an individual stuff, and like
and they were like a So is he saying that she chose a TikTok counselor?
Like that is just what happened. A lot of this stuff took.
I want to know the context around like the open Isn't there like a claim of like he just wanted to be in an open relationship? That's the way that she framed it.
Place in this final year here in 2021. We got to the end of the year, and it just was so clear that we tried everything we need to break up, and we broke up. You know, this last fall.
I wonder if in that relationship counselor that they talked about the ectopic pregnancy, it was probably a big point of contention for her. So they probably did. But okay. I mean, it's possible because she mentioned something about an open relationship. I could swear she did. It's possible that they went in there and then he said like, I want to be in an open relationship. Well, okay.
Fall. And I thought for a while, you know, that it was going to be not a good thing necessarily, because breakups suck, and especially when you're 4 years with somebody is really difficult. You know, it seemed like it was going to be amicable for a while. We were really polite texting each other during the breakup when we were
Bro, this seems very, very comparable to a relationship I had. Holy shit. I don't want to get into my fucking personal life, but I mean, Jesus Christ.
Coordinating her coming back over to the house to get some of her stuff and move out. I had offered to watch the dog for her when she was out of town. And it was pretty shortly after we did privately break up that I was watching the dog one weekend, and she came back to get some stuff from my house and to get the dog. And she surprised me because she came back in and she had brought me some gifts and said that she wanted to get back together with me, that she was sorry that it didn't work out and she didn't want to give up. And she said she wanted to come back into my life. And I just looked at all the effort that we had put in the last year, and I just thought that we had really given it as much of a try as we possibly could. And I just said, I'm sorry, like I'm not there right now. I don't think it's a good idea. And this was before I put out the public statement at all on Twitter in the few days after, or in the, since after we broke up. And I was texting her that morning saying, like, I want you to weigh in on what we have to say. I don't want to put out anything without checking in with you. I understand that we're both public individuals, and I just don't want anybody's interpretations of us to fall on the other side. Like, let's work on the statement together. She came back in and she said that evening that she wanted to get back together. I said I wasn't ready to do that. And she screamed at me and said, you can put out whatever you want, but don't say it was mutual. That's a lie. And she slammed the door and left my house.
Whoa.
And then really shortly afterwards, this video came out that talked about the worst time in both of our lives. And
so this video is what he's saying. Maybe somebody can verify the timeline. This came out as almost a retribution. Is that what he's trying to say, basically? Interesting. Okay. I mean, I don't necessarily doubt it. The thing that still makes me skeptical is like the way in which he operated through this situation. But okay.
I just wasn't expecting it, and it left me so sad because she had to go through legitimate trauma, and I just do not, for 1 second, I do not want to undermine that. I think that, unfortunately, it's just so unfortunate how this came out, because this could have been such an amazing opportunity for us to both talk together about the shortcomings and the mistakes and the things that we learned during this time together. There was never any interest expressed in doing that during our time together, and unfortunately, right after the breakup, she took to doing a lot of the things that I think a lot of folks have seen post her video coming out. I just really, like, especially, I just want to interject again. I am not trying to discredit her one single bit. Like, I was so intimately involved in the...
It's so interesting because, like, when he says that he didn't want to discredit her a bit, like... Okay. So what it sounds like to me is he's trying to be very careful because he knows that she went through something that was shitty. But, like, it seems like possibly, based on what he's saying, right? I think we should put probably the pretext that this was a personal issue that the two of them had. And, like, these types of things can get, like, really rocky back and forth. Obviously, like, people, if anybody, probably anybody in the chat could expose their ex for shitty behavior. You know what I mean? Because you're in, like, a toxic relationship in some capacity. It sounds like he's being careful because other people might perceive it that he's being invalidating of her. But I will say, I'm not saying that this is Sabrina. I will say that people is a very real thing for people with legitimate claims to, like, issues of, like, traumatic situations and really shitty pasts. It is very possible, it's very real, and it does happen that people weaponize their, like, legitimate traumas in a way that's, like, shitty. Like, it's like they have something that goes on, but then they utilize that at convenient times in order to portray particular narratives. And I think that people, at least I have been in relationships with people that have done that, where, and you could look at a big example. Boogie 2988 is, like, the perfect example of that. He does it so actively and openly that we can identify it easily, but it's not necessarily easy for us to identify it all the time. That's an exaggerated scenario. So,
the being around the trauma at the time, and I know the hurt that she was going through, and this was just so absolutely personal, and I never wanted to deal with this issue in this regard. I just didn't want it to happen like this. I'm sorry. I usually don't speak about anything like this. This is kind of an uncomfortable and embarrassing thing to talk about. She took to Twitter the same day that the video came out, and she was liking tweets and retweeting things from random users that I just feel like really unfairly mischaracterized me during what happened in that situation.
Interesting. Okay, so Wubby's saying he's...
Like, really unfairly mischaracterized me and retweeting things from random day that the video came out, and she was liking tweets and retweeting things.
Okay, so it sounds like Wubby's saying that that's true. He's like, yeah, that's what happened. Okay, so with this framing, I think it's important. I do truly think it's important to understand this. when you express something like as horrible and traumatic of an experience that Sabrina expressed, I will say it does come off as a bit disingenuous when the first thing you do after expressing something like that is jumping on Twitter and riding the wave of it. It feels a little performative. If I express something really intense about my life, a really horrible, shitty, dramatic experience, I wouldn't go on Twitter and start retweeting, hey guys, blah, 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 blah. You know, it just feels... I don't know how to communicate the feeling that I would get by expressing something that fucked me up so bad. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, imagine taking the worst of your life, a moment of your life, and throwing it on the internet. I don't think I would be able to go and interact with the internet for a long time. That's just me. That's just my observation. And so I can understand why. I remember this one thing, and you know, where I think I criticized her for one big thing, and that was like the dramatic pauses and zooming in her video. I remember saying like, oh, this comes off as a little disingenuous. And I do wonder if part of it, the motivation, was to try to get back at him for a thing that he did was like really shitty. And maybe she was like, you know what? And you know what? Maybe what she did when we zoom out and look was like a really shitty thing by weaponizing her trauma. But then from her, we have her perspective might have been like, this guy's really shitty. And we're probably not getting the exact scenario here. You know, he may have done something shitty, or he probably was a shitty boyfriend. And she's like, you know what? This guy's a really shitty person. Everybody on the internet thinks he's such a great guy. Let me go fucking shit on him, you know? I think that's wrong. I think it's wrong. But then also, I don't know if do we blame her? This is one of the problems when we get into these conversations about like the depths of a toxic relationship. Because at the end of the day, they're usually so complicated that both of them, they're usually so complicated. And he might have been shittier to her, honestly. But it's so complicated to get the ins and outs. It's so difficult to communicate and express the really subtle issues that you have in like a relationship. You know what I mean?
Random users that I just feel like really unfairly mischaracterized me during what happened in that situation. And it was beyond stuff like that too. You know, she took to creating memes about me and the situation and continued to post about this. And unfortunately, it didn't just stop from a public front. She took to a lot of my friends and people that I do business with that aren't publicly personalities as well, and tried to get them to stop working with me. Tried to cut off connections. And I know this because in the last half of a year, I've had a number of these people come to me personally and just say that she made them feel extraordinarily uncomfortable by the kind of conversations that she had with them following this video. I felt so embarrassed for myself and for my friend. A number of these people front. She took to a lot of my friends and people that I do business with that aren't publicly personalities as well, and tried to get them to stop working with me.
Interesting.
Tried to cut off connections. And I know this because in the last half of a year, I've had a number of these people come to me personally and just say that she made them feel extraordinarily uncomfortable by the kind of conversations that she had with them following this video. I felt so embarrassed for myself and for my friends. And I have tried to maintain a position as this stuff has been happening that it is, you know, I think we all understand people that are public personalities like this, like how valuable people's reputations are and their connections with people personally and professionally. And I just have not wanted to do or say anything that would take opportunities away from her or anybody else involved around me. You know, there were a couple times that I did try to just add more clarification. And really one of the only times was after I put out my apology video, you know, 24 hours went by and she tweeted out like, never been to a day of couples therapy in my life. And I totally understand the validity in the semantics of, you know, therapy versus counseling. Again, this is another area I was not very intimately involved in and familiar with. So if it was a misclassification error, like I totally understand that, but I think it's a little bit more of a binary approach to it to just say, you know, I've never been to a day of this in my life. On that situation, I talked to a couple of people close to me. I said, what can I do here? You know, at this point, it feels like this is not, you know, when I put out my apology video, it was over 3 months past the time that she put out her video. And I just said, I don't know what to do here. I just feel like I need to defend myself.
This is one of the problems, though. And this is a huge problem. Is why wait 3 months? What possessed you to wait like 3 months to even address the situation? And then when you did come back, you tried not to address the situation. Right? I think that's a huge problem for me. Is like, why wait so long to put this framing out there? Because I don't think it's unreasonable for people to speculate and go like, is any of this really true? Or did you wait 6 months to construct and craft a response that would be like a massive like negative and make her look as bad as possible? Why wait 3 months? Why wait 6 months? Why not just do it almost immediately? Maybe take a couple of weeks, maybe even a month. I get that. And then come back with like, okay, like here's my perspective, rather than wait 3 months. Well, he made a post saying, oh, he just made some bullshit post that says I'm disappearing for a while, which to me is just going right into the process of the normal bullshit YouTube apology. And then doing that, and then waiting like 3 months, posting again something that's completely irrelevant. But I think that it was something that was almost potentially could have been constructed or construed as making fun of her or something. I remember it was like a distasteful video he came back with. And then here we are. Now it's 6 months later, and we're supposed to take all this as a fact. You know?
There were a lot of digs at my character and my decisions, and I said, I just really feel the need to defend myself. Again, I was not trying to discredit any of her trauma regarding this medical situation. But I was like, hey, we did do these things, and this was a person that she had chosen, and she had brought forward to us. This was her pick. And so I shared the receipts of that. Online, I just said, I'm really confused why she is claiming that we never did this. Here are a few of the receipts I have in my inbox because I paid for these as well. So I had the documentation of some of these sessions. And then right away, she tweeted out trying to discredit the counselor, calling her just like a TikTok therapist or something. And then she tried to share intimate details of completely mischaracterized and taken out of context, like things that we talked about during these sessions. She said that if anybody saw the tweet, it was pretty inflammatory and disgusting. She took that down immediately, and then an hour or so after that, she tweeted out that she was not going to continue talking about this, and that she never even named me, and it was only to share her story. And
well, I mean, like that's kind of BS. Like she knows what would have happened. Like, come on.
I mean, I don't know. I think you could pretty clearly see a contradiction in intention between those two things within the span of a day or a few hours here. I think I'm at the point now where I
want to see the pushback from Wubby a little bit.
I just don't want to have problems with anybody. Mm-hmm. It was not my goal when I started doing this work 7 years ago to be getting into arguments and problems with people. Maybe it's more the Midwest in me, but I'm accustomed to dealing with problems personally and privately between the person that is involved and the respective friends and families. I was not prepared to deal with this stuff. I know that some people have been critical of my return, saying that I should have done something or that I shouldn't have done something. And I just want to say, I'm really doing the best here. It is a situation that I felt had been properly handled and apologized for and dealt with in a private fashion. And I just want to assert that nothing that I have done during the few months since her video was ever intended to try to hit back at her or have any sort of commentary response. I just want to acknowledge something too that I've seen some folks kind of lambast in the months since I've done this. I tried after a few months hiatus coming back with a sketch. I did a sketch called The Kid in Gym Class Who Always Needed an Ice Pack. Mm-hmm. This is an idea that I'd had a long time before any of this stuff happened. I filmed it with a friend and I showed it to a couple people close to me, and
and people were, it comes off as because the fundamentals of it is basically somebody who overreacts to the issues that they have, and it's tone deaf at the very least, but it felt intentional. It felt a bit intentional.
And everyone else just thought it was nothing other than just trying to get back into the swing of stuff here. I totally recognize how fucking stupid it was to not comb through every possible thought that people might have of me during this time. I had so many people come out and say, this is Gus clearly trying to take a shot at Sabrina and continue to undermine her medical trauma. I just want to say, that was never, ever my intention. Boy, don't you think I feel like a complete moron for not making that connection at all. It just was never, ever my intention.
Again, though, I just don't know why you didn't come back with your framing. You can say, I wish I didn't have to. I get that. You're an internet personality, and who really wants to sit down and have this discussion about a part of your life like that? knowing that it's impossible to truly like express the scenario. Like, because it happened a while ago. A lot of times people forget specifics, but they remember how they felt. They remember the feelings. You might forget a specific, but you don't forget the feeling, right? And so usually what happens is like a thing happens, and then you probably forget the details. You remember how you felt, and when you bring it up again, you express how you felt, but you assign situations to the way that you felt. You don't remember the exact scenario where a thing happened, but you remember the way you felt, and you're going to construct a scenario based off how you felt. And this is why it's basically telephone tag with your history. I understand that. I understand. I didn't want to have to do this, but the comeback video really felt like a brushing off, like a kind of just a brush off bullshit.
Just felt foolish about that, and it got to a point where I thought that if I took it down, people would take that as an admission of guilt, like, I tried to do that, you got me. So I just ultimately left it up. Really nothing
gotta chase that bag.
Prepares you for a situation like this where you suddenly have to defend to millions of people your reputation, your intentions, when one person right after a breakup really just smears you like this. It's terrifying and it's confusing.
Interesting. So like, I think that's very telling. He said that she smeared him. I think that's his true feeling, is that she tried to smear him. I know it was a little bit of a Freudian slip, but he's trying to walk on eggshells, possibly because it's possible because he thinks that everybody's, this is one of the aspects, is if you play victim on the internet, even if whether you're valid or not, people are going to just double down on whatever you said. It's one of those unfortunate things. It's one of those scenarios, and it's also one of those situations where like somebody could say you did a thing, and at that point you did that thing. Like, somebody could just come out and lie and be like, oh, he did this to me. I'm not saying Sabrina did this, but everybody's like, they must have done it. They must have done that. That thing is thing, part of it's because people like to look at the situations and like sensationalize it. There's a lot of different aspects to it. And so even if you didn't do it, like, you can't prove it wrong. It becomes like a conspiracy that lives on, And
I certainly did some dumb stuff, but all I can say is I completely promised that I never intended to do anything to try to hit back at or undermine her experience or this situation.
I do have questions if you want to answer them. You don't have to. I could ask them and you can see if you feel like it.
Okay.
Your call.
I could take some questions.
Okay. This one might be rough, but a lot of us from the sidelines were really confused about what happened between you and Eddie. We got two big responses from him that were confusing and vague, and he painted himself. He was fully on Sabrina's side, okay, but he also painted himself as a victim, and then he kept saying, don't ask me about it. I don't want to be involved, but I was fucked too. You don't need to share personal, intimate details, but is there anything you want people to know about that?
I totally understand the question. I don't want to make Eddie's life more difficult one single bit. I'm sure this will probably be a disappointing answer to some. I don't want to be misrepresentative of mine and Eddie's current relationship. We don't speak. I don't want to drag anybody else into this. And I think if there are people that are out there that are fans of either my work or his or our collective work completely, people that really give a shit about us don't really want to see us be fighting or say disrespectful things to each other.
Just fucking say what you want to say. It's a lot of this eggshell.
So I'm just not going to do that. I've been really happy to see all of his successes lately. I hope that those continue. But I think that's as much as I want to talk about in regards to him. So thank you for asking.
Of course. And
I don't know, man. It just feels like a little bit of a cop-out when you have an individual who's like, yeah, this guy's really bad. This is a friend of mine. Hey, this guy, I know this guy personally, and he's a really shitty person. And he's like, yeah, I wish him success. I don't want to get into it. I feel like you're playing you're playing like the good guy. It feels that way. It's like, I don't want to talk about it because I'm a good guy. It's like, it's possible that that's how he actually feels. Also possible that he doesn't have a defensible position and he's just saying this so that he can like come out on top looking like a good guy. You know what I mean?
I appreciate the answer. Before, I let you go, that you covered damn near everything, but is there anything else you want to say? Anything you want my chat to know? I can imagine this is the part that will get clipped. Any final words you have to say to people who agree, who disagree, who are just now tuning in?
I've been living in about half of a year here of being really afraid of what to do and uncertain of where I stand with a lot of people. And I just want people to know that, like, I am not trying to discredit anybody or start any problems with people. I hate drama. I don't like doing that.
I don't know, man. Like, it's possible that he does hate, dude. It just comes off as very soft to me. Like, I don't know. Here, bro, if what he's saying is true, and it's possible he could just be a really soft, a bit of a softie. But if somebody ever came out and did what he's suggesting Sabrina did, I wouldn't hold back. I would unleash onto that person. I'd be like, you're full of fucking shit. I'm going to give you the specifics. Here's the areas where I did wrong, but you want to know what? This is why I did it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You know? To me, dancing around it like this, it just I mean, I could be wrong, but it just feels like apprehension to talk about it. It feels like a cop-out. It feels like a cop-out. It feels like you wanted to retell the story and then be like, well, I don't want to put my foot down anywhere, though. It's like, but why wouldn't you be angry? I feel like I'd be so angry if somebody did this to me. If they misrepresented me, I'd be fucking pissed, you know? He can't do that because he knows other people will come back with receipts. Maybe. I mean, that's possible. I don't really know.
Have no interest in a public back and forth with anybody about the situation. You know, like, honestly, I'm fearful that even this appearance today will create more problems for myself.
I mean, that's possible too. I mean, maybe he's afraid that other people involved will be like, I'm going to make a response and say ABCD XYZ. I mean, the internet landscape is a bit different. I get that. It's just like,
I just don't. In the last half of a year, it has been really difficult in a lot of areas, and it has absolutely eroded.
I mean, it could be because he doesn't want to have the controversy. It could be because he knows he'll come out like on the bottom if he does that.
My mental health significantly. I'm finally getting to a place in my personal life where a lot of this has hopefully subsided and been put to bed, but it's really difficult as I continue to kind of put myself out there on my own platforms and try to do work with others on their platforms. It's very hurtful, embarrassing, and difficult to see still a good number of people out there with a completely, in my eyes, just fully misrepresentative idea of what happened between me and this person, as well as their intentions.
I think you said it well, and I think that you even coming on here in light of, or with all the shit storm that comes anytime you make any sort of appearance, I think it was really brave, and I think it was you shared a lot of insight on what happened.
I don't think it was brave. That's a bit of an over. It was brave of you. No, it's not brave of you. It's normal. Get the fuck out of here.
I think we all appreciate that. So thank you.
I'll try to keep this super succinct. Can I just end on one final thought here really quick?
You have the final word, brother.
I just want to say that I want to continue to be a mouthpiece for good, and I really want to be just a force for good, and I want to stand up for people, and none of that stuff has changed. That's what I've been trying to be about for years. You know, it is a very real thing for women to be disproportionately ignored and misdiagnosed and disrespected by many people in the medical field. That is a real reality. That is something that I had to be intimately involved with to stand up for people, and none of that stuff has changed. That's what I've been trying to be about for years. You know, it is a very real thing for women to be disproportionately ignored and misdiagnosed and disrespected by many people in the medical field. That is a real reality. That is something that I had to be intimately involved with to see first.
It is a reality. It is a reality.
And I want to continue to step up and stand up for people and raise awareness in these areas. I'm embarrassed that I wasn't always the best person when it happened in my life, and I just want more people to be aware of stuff like that. And I just thank you, Wubby, and thank you, folks. And please don't believe everything that you read on the internet, and be good to people in that order.
Well, it feels scripted. I don't know.
Order, I guess. I don't know.
All right, fair enough. Thank you, Gus. Thank you for coming on. I appreciate you, man. Have a good one. Take it easy, Wubby.
Have a nice night, everybody.
Bye, dude. Whoa. I think that him coming on was brave, just to be fair.
Brave? Come on. Not brave. It's fucking ridiculous.
Fair. I think that me listening to him speak there is the same as me watching Sabrina's video, right? I gave her
that's fine,
all the time. I watched her whole video from start to end. And I sat here the day that came out, and I told my chat one simple thing, I want to hear Gus's side. And now, here we are. I've heard Gus's side. I think Gus's ability to talk was taken from him by everyone trying to cancel him.
I don't think that's true at all. I disagree wholeheartedly that somehow that having like adversity existing negates, in this context, negates your ability to speak for yourself. He could have spoke his mind. He decided not to. I think that he, personally, to me, it comes off like he did it as like a PR stunt. Yeah, I'm not going to talk about it. I will blows up. That doesn't. He didn't get robbed of any ability to express himself at whatsoever. He chose not to talk about it.
And as he said, hear people out. I also want to be very clear, too, that I don't think any of this should change what Sabrina went through. I think that her medical nightmare and the healing process after that was valid. And listening to Gus and recognizing that he has a side of the story does not in any way, in my opinion, take anything away from what she went through, her trauma, what sounds like potential PTSD, anxiety attacks, the hell of her almost dying, the doctors being awful. You know, all of that can be true, and Gus could still be being misrepresented. I think that's up for you to decide, but I think you deciding that, no matter what side you fall on, won't take away from Sabrina's struggle, right? Gus doesn't have to be a piece of shit abuser for Sabrina to have gone through a life-altering and horrific experience medically,
Sure,
right?
yeah.
And then the aftermath. Get this, guys. Relationships are really fucking complicated and super nuanced, and there's two sides every time. So I'll leave you with that. We had a lot more to do tonight. I hope you guys like the content. Thank you, Gus, for coming on and being brave. If you guys like Gus's content, go check him out. If you don't, leave the fuck alone. Have a nice night, everybody.
Brave, okay. Yeah, man, listen, like, I gotta get a new arm and a new chair. Listen, man, at the end of the day, there are a lot of big red flags. The narrative that we got here was that she was using her trauma as a weapon. I mean, basically, reading between the lines, she was using her trauma as a weapon to try to deplatform him because he wouldn't get back together with her. That's pretty much what he said. That sums it up. And I don't know how much I believe that. It could be true. I think that from my perspective, it's a massive red flag to completely try to do your best to just ignore the situation. He keeps saying that, like, he didn't want to start drama. He's like, drama. To me, maybe, or maybe you just knew that you would have got nay-nayed by everybody around you if you misspoke. And you took 6 months to construct what you thought was like the best case scenario. The best framing that you could have possibly given. I don't know. 6 months, bro. At this point, like, yeah, it's up in the air. We're not sure. It was probably a relationship that had levels of toxicity in it. We understand that. And we understand that, like, public drama from, like, a private scenario, it could go, like, either way. People do weaponize their very real traumas, and they use them as a weapon, and people act like shit. At the end of the day, do I think that this is, like, life-defining for Gus? Probably not. I doubt that. I mean, you know, the toxic relationships where you're not really in love with the person you're with brings out the worst in you for both sides. But I still, like, you know, it's one of those things where I wouldn't go and bombard the guy and be like, fuck this guy, he's an abuser, blah, blah, blah. But I just would stay away from him, for me personally, because it's just too sussy. A little too suspicious. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and another special shout out to all my Patreon and Twitch subs. If you'd like to support this channel further than you already have by just watching the video alone, go down to the links below where you can sub on my Patreon, which will allow you to get your name on this beautiful black wall. Or you can go to the Twitch page and you can actually use a free Amazon Prime sub, if you have Amazon Prime, to subscribe. Thank you very much, guys. Take care.